The right-hand side of this intertemporal budget constraint, which we wrote as the present value of after-tax income, has a convenient interpretation as something called wealth, which we will call WE. Now what equation 3 says, this intertemporal budget constraint, is that the present value of consumption, that is current consumption plus the present value of future consumption, is equal to wealth. And that wealth is just whatever after-tax income is today and in the future. Now in the real world, wealth includes a whole bunch of other things, including, for example, the value of equity in homes, ownership of stocks and bonds, what you're accumulating as we speak, human capital. One of the properties of preferences is that consumers want to try to smooth their consumption. And what that says is that changes in wealth are going to imply changes in either current or future consumption. And the full effect of a change in wealth need not show up immediately. It might show up over time as the whole path of consumption adjusts. So to be concrete, and I want you to work out these numbers on your own, let's just assume that you're endowed with 100 units of goods today, you pay 20 units in taxes, 120 units of goods tomorrow, and you pay 30 units of taxes in the future. And the real interest rate is 5%. Well then, wealth is just the present value of after-tax income, so that's equal to 165.71. And this value of wealth scaled by the interest rate is equal to 174. So we can plot the consumer's intertemporal budget constraint. What we have here is consumption today plus future consumption discounted by the interest rate equals, after-tax income today plus after-tax income in the future discounted by the real interest rate, and that whole thing is equal to wealth. So what we've plotted here is on the horizontal axis we have current consumption, so that's C. On the vertical axis we have future consumption, CF. So you can just pick two extreme points using this budget constraint. If current consumption is 0, then what is future consumption? It's 1 plus R times wealth. Well, that's this point B up here. Alternatively, if future consumption is 0, then current consumption is just equal to wealth, and that's WE, point A down here. So we're going to use this budget constraint to talk about the intertemporal trade-offs that agents are making. Now, if the consumer is endowed with this point, this mix of current and future income at point E, and they choose to consume up here, then what they have to be doing is they have to be saving today. Whereas if they choose to consume more more today than they have in income, then they have to be borrowing. So down here, they're going to borrow. Up here, they're going to save. Now, if we look at actual data, one measure of wealth shows up in the real S&P 500 stock price index. And what you see here in the blue line is that wealth, as measured by stock prices, is far more volatile than consumption, as measured by the red line, which is consumption of non-durables and services. If we look at wealth as measured by house prices, again we see that wealth is far more volatile than consumption. So in other words, people are smoothing their consumption over time, even in the face of fluctuating wealth. The same is true if we look at measures of income. So this plots US GDP as the blue line, consumption as the red line, and what you see again is that GDP is more volatile than consumption. Personal income is the blue line, consumption is the red line. Again, consumption is far smoother than income. So the data tell you very clearly that individuals make consumption savings decisions in order to try to make their consumption paths as smooth as possible over time. And that's even in the face of fluctuating income or fluctuating wealth.